August is on its way, planning needs to be done, so I'm pumped to be sharing this month's plan with me. Before we get into it though, I do want to say a huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. I am really happy to be partnering with them. I love using them for my own blog, CaitlinDeSilva.com, and I'll be talking about some of my favorite features a little bit later. This month's spreads were by far the most time consuming to put together, especially that first spread that I create, which you're gonna see me do in a few seconds. Also used a lot of craft paper again this month and brought in some yellow to complement, August, which when I think of August, I think peak summer vibes. So I'm looking forward to seeing what your thoughts are on the spreads. Let's get into it. I'm starting August's plan with me with one of the most extra things that I've ever done in my bullet journal, and that is sewing. Yes, needle and thread sewing on paper. Bet you didn't see that coming. I actually got this idea from a memory because when I was younger, my mom got really into scrapbooking, and one of the things that she experimented with was sewing on paper. So I thought it'd be fun to try doing that in today's spread. I penciled in a sun doodle on some craft paper and outlined the sketch with holes that I could pass my needle through, and then I just started threading. This process was really tedious, but it was oddly incredibly satisfying to watch it come together. I've actually had this sewing kit in my apartment for any sewing emergencies like a loose button, but I definitely never thought I'd be using this in a planning setting. But apparently anything in my apartment now is at risk of being put in my journal, so I'm scared to see what ideas or inspiration comes to me next. My tip for anyone who does want to do some paper sewing is to keep your design simple to save on time. I really liked the unique texture that this added to the spread, and I think the sun was a really appropriate choice for the last full month of summer, and not something I'll be doing every week in my journal because, as I mentioned, very tedious. After pasting in some more craft paper, I then went in with a Tombow in the color 993, which is linked in the description box below, as well as links to everything else I use in today's video. And I added some color to the paper before then going in with my white jelly roll in the size 10 to write out the word August. The size 10 of this pen has just become my new favorite pen to use when creating bold headers in white. Once you get the pen going, it almost has like this paint-like quality to it that makes it really easy to color things in, and I think that just comes from the fact that it's a thicker sized white pen. On the right page, I created a mini calendar with a section at the bottom for highlighting important dates. I keep going back to this mini calendar layout because it's so easy to put together. It's functional in that it gives me space in my journal to reference when making my weekly spreads, but it's also something visually a bit different than a large calendar layout, so I'm really loving everything about it. Adding touches of yellow here was definitely a must though to help bridge the two pages together. So I created a drop shadow on the calendar and added a pop of color to the page title with the same Tombow I used on the first page. At the last minute, I decided to go back to August's title and outline it in black with the Muji Gel Ink pen in the size 5. I used this same technique last month in my starting a new bullet journal video, and I find it to be a really beautiful finishing touch that brings some life to white text. For the next spread, I cut out a small craft paper rectangle and used my white pen to make it look like a web page from the internet. This page is designated for logging blog post ideas and keeping track of the writing process of those posts. I started my blog earlier in 2020 and was so impressed with how easy it was to create a beautiful site with Squarespace. I love having a spot on the internet to keep you guys up to date with new videos and post more content about journaling, organization, self-care, and more. But since I like to batch write my blog posts, I really appreciate all of Squarespace's workflow features that make it really easy for me to see what stage each blog post is at, whether that be published, drafted, needs reviewing, or scheduled. Pre-scheduling my blog post makes it so that I have one less thing to remember during the week, and my brain is forever grateful for that. So if you're looking to start a blog of your own, either to write on topics you're passionate about or to showcase your portfolio of work, using Squarespace will make the process simple and fun. You can check out squarespace.com for a free trial and use the URL squarespace.com/Caitlin'sCorner to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. When I'm trying to do batch work, it's really important for me to have a spot like this to write down ideas that come to mind randomly throughout the week so that once I sit down to write, ideas are ready to go. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. Once again, I also whipped out my Tombow for a drop shadow, and that was that for this spread. A clean design, but incredibly useful. This next spread is the last one that uses a full sheet of craft paper, and it's going to be my August space for habit tracking. I had some people tell me about Archer and Olive's craft paper dotted journal in one of my planner videos, and as much as I love using craft paper right now, as you can tell by this video, I do like having the freedom not to use it as well, and you'll see the next few spreads use less and less of it. And in my updated student bullet journal video that will be going live next week, you'll see the return of my more minimal style of bullet journaling. But I loved using the craft paper here. This habit tracker page has a spot for tracking down hydration, moving my body, and expressing gratitude, which are 3 things I find important to do every day. You may have caught on to the fact that I usually pencil out what I'm going to create on each page before filming these Plan With Me's, and that just helps me go into these filming sessions having an idea and not wasting time hemming and hawing because I have only so much space on my memory card. But it's fun sometimes to just let my pen do its thing like I'm doing here with this particular spread. Not every dot, line, or piece of writing turned out perfect, but the imperfections are the things I love most about it. For this next set of pages, I wanted to create some craft paper roses. Roses aren't too difficult to doodle, as I hope you can see here. I'm just really focusing on getting those jagged lines on the petals, and I just keep doing that until the rose feels kind of complete. I also made some leaf doodles, and some of the roses were drawn over yellow and pink colored craft paper that was done with Tombows. And then once everything was drawn out, I took my scissors out and cut all of them. But I wasn't too focused on making the cuts super perfect. I just wanted to make sure each one had a slight border to them because that was the look I was going for. After I made all my cuts, I started playing around with the layout that would give me enough space to have writing chunks on the page. And once I had a rough idea of what I wanted, I used my glue tape to adhere everything to the paper. Which, speaking of glue tape, I'm happy to have this back in my life. Using a glue stick, although it worked, definitely made pasting a lot messier. But thankfully with glue tape, it takes the mess out of the whole process. So I'm happy to be pasting things in my journal again. This one is a permanent roll from Tombow, and it is linked below with everything else. A book that I'm unashamed to say I'm most excited for in August is the new Twilight book, Midnight Sun. I remember reading the first chunk of Midnight Sun when Stephanie Meyer released it after the leak went out, and it's crazy to think that 23-year-old me now gets to experience the full thing that elementary school me would have gone seriously hard-eyed over. On the bottom left page, I wrote down some affirmations to repeat whenever I come across this spread. Some of them include, I am a magnet attracting an abundance of health, love, and happiness, which is one I say a lot. I am open to new opportunities and lessons, and fear doesn't stop me, it helps me grow. And then on the right page, I listed some me time activities and wrote down this quote that is so beautiful that says, be kinder to yourself and let your kindness flood the world. This month's weekly spread takes a major step away from craft paper. I used a small amount at the top left to write the page title, but the rest of the spread uses only my black micron in the size 8. The geometric leaf that you're seeing me draw at the bottom right of the page was actually inspired by a print I currently have hanging in my kitchen's gallery wall from Society 6. I just love the sharper edges that the leaf petals were made out of, and I thought it'd be really cute to recreate and fill in each petal with a basic line pattern that you're going to see me do in a few seconds. And I really loved how that ended up turning out, and I almost wish I would have carried that doodle through more of August spreads, but it's something I'll definitely bring back in the future. There are 7 rectangles for each day of the week that has enough room for writing down big events and appointments and or a mini to-do list. There's also a spot to do some meal planning for each day where I can figure out in advance what I'll be eating for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I finished it all off with a quote by Melody Beattie that says, gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what we have into enough and more. Again, another beautiful quote. Gratitude is so important, and I love having it in a spot where I'm going to see it a lot during the week. And I added some drop shadows to each day of the week's box. I should have done this with the black brush pen to make the process easier, but I'm pretty happy with the end result. Shockingly, I think my favorite spread that I did in Harlow this month was the 2 pages with all the craft paper roses. I would have thought the sewing would be on the top of that list, especially with the amount of time that I took to figure that out. But I actually like the simplicity of those roses. They're just a really nice artistic touch to the page without it being overwhelming, and it's very doable for any level of art skills. Thank you again to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Do not forget to check out that description box below for a link that you can click and get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. As I already spoiled earlier in the video, the new updated student/work bullet journal video will be going live next, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss that. I did hold back on the craft paper usage, so don't worry. I wanted to make sure it was accessible to anyone with whatever supplies you have. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below which spread this month was your favorite in Harlow, and I'll see you soon with another video. Until then, bye everyone.
Don't take it personal, I ain't lying, I ain't hiding, I've been grinding, multiplying. I've been trying to get my weight up, staying prayed up, meditating and taking time away. You always posting up